Age doesn't define us. Movement does. That was the belief of Dr. Shigeaki Hinohara, a Japanese physician who lived past 100 and kept working, writing, and walking well into his later years. It wasn't a miracle that kept him going. It wasn't a pill. It was purpose. It was rhythm. It was nourishment, not just of the body, but of the heart, the routine, the spirit. And that's exactly what this story is about. My grandfather wasn't a famous doctor. He never wrote a book. He lived most of his life in a small house with creaky floors and a garden full of mint, rosemary, and tomatoes. But he did something many people today struggle to believe is still possible. He stayed active, truly active, until he was 93. He walked, he cooked, he remembered details from his youth, and he laughed at jokes you had to be quick to catch. And when you asked him how he managed to stay so alive in a body that had lived nearly a century, he'd always say, "It's the food. That's where it begins. That's what keeps you standing." This video isn't about secret tricks or exotic ingredients you've never heard of. It's not about chasing youth. It's about returning to something we've forgotten, the slow, steady power of real nourishment. Because there is a silent question many people over 60 carry in their minds, even if they never speak it aloud. Is it too late to rebuild my strength? Too late to feel less tired? Too late to walk without that ache in the hip or that fear of falling? But in kitchens from Okinawa to Calabria, and in quiet villages where people still reach their 90s with clear minds and steady hands, the answer has been whispered for generations. In soups, in broths, in breakfast beans and garden vegetables. Den Buettner, who studied the world's longest living communities, said it best. The elders in blue zones don't depend on superfoods. They don't rely on trends or supplements. They eat what grows around them, and they eat it often. Humble, consistent, simple, over years, over decades. That's what makes the difference. So today, I'm going to walk you through 7 foods that kept my grandfather upright, independent, and sharp. Not to suggest you copy everything, but to invite you to remember, to look at what these foods meant, why they worked, how they spoke to his needs as an aging man, and how they might still work for you. This is not a list. It's a conversation, a story, a path you might begin walking, one meal at a time, with your own body, your own history, your own healing. Let's begin where my grandfather always began his day, with warmth, with beans, and with oil. A small plate that fed his muscles, moved his bowels, and gave him the strength to carry the rest of the day. There's something quietly powerful about starting your morning, not with noise or sugar, but with warmth. A bowl of gently sautéed beans, the scent of olive oil in a warm pan, a sprinkle of thyme, maybe a touch of garlic. It may sound simple, and it is, but that simplicity hides a quiet kind of medicine, especially for those over 60. As we age, the body starts sending soft cries for help. Constipation becomes common. Energy dips without warning. The belly feels heavy. The sleep never seems enough. And there's a sense, almost like a fog, that something inside isn't flowing right. What many don't realize is that the gut, which once handled so much without complaint, begins to slow down. The fibers it once easily moved now sit longer. The fats it once used to absorb nutrients now pass through uninvited. And so we grow tired. Not because of age alone, but because our digestion is starving for the right kind of balance. My grandfather used to say that breakfast should carry you, not chase you. That's why he often began his day with legumes, black beans, lentils, or whatever was available, slowly cooked, never rushed. These are more than just protein sources. They contain what scientists call resistant starch, something that feeds the good bacteria in your gut and gives your body steady energy without spikes or crashes. But here's the key. It was always with olive oil. Always. Olive oil isn't just fat, it's a transporter. It helps your body absorb the fat-soluble vitamins hidden in those beans, like vitamin K and some B-complex nutrients, which are essential for energy production and bone strength. Without the oil, the beans are helpful. But with it, they become complete. In parts of the world where people live the longest, Icaria in Greece, certain areas of Italy, breakfast isn't sweet, it's savory, it's soft, it's grounding. Elders there begin their day with warm legumes, olive oil, and herbs. And they don't just eat and they sit, they chew, they digest. Slowly, their joints don't scream, their minds stay clearer, and their energy lasts. not in bursts but like a steady flame. What I found most beautiful was the way my grandfather turned this into a quiet ritual. 3 times a week, a half cup of beans, cooked gently with rosemary or oregano, topped with a swirl of oil, always cold-pressed, always unhurried. He'd sit by the window, toast a small piece of bread and eat in silence, and then he'd stand up, without groaning, without stiffness, as if his whole body had heard the message, "We are fed, we are ready." Beans with oil may seem humble, but they are not small. They are the handshake between your gut and your muscles. They are the way you tell your body, first thing in the morning, "I care for you. I want you strong. Let's walk through this day together." Let's carry that image as we move forward, from the gut to the joints, from warmth to brightness, because the next food on my grandfather's list was golden, grounding, and full of quiet medicine. It came from the earth, and it looked like the sun. It's easy to walk past a pumpkin in the store and see only a decoration, a memory of autumn, a symbol of something seasonal and fleeting. But in many older traditions, especially in South America and rural Europe, pumpkin was never ornamental. It was sacred. It was healing. It was food for the sick, for the tired, for the aging body asking quietly for repair. As people grow older, there are losses that don't always make noise. The knees ache after just a short walk. The eyes grow dry and tired by mid-afternoon. Wounds seem to take longer to heal. Illness lingers longer than it should. Often these changes aren't dramatic. They arrive slowly, like the changing of seasons. But behind them is often a silent shortage, not of time, but of nutrients. Specifically, zinc and carotenoids, 2 pillars of immunity, vision, and tissue repair. Pumpkin brings both. The orange flesh carries beta-carotene, a plant pigment that turns into vitamin A, critical for eyesight, skin, and the thin linings of the lungs and digestive tract. Without it, healing slows, infections find easier ground, and energy wanes, not because the mind is tired, but because the body lacks the raw materials to keep its walls strong. Alongside it, the seeds, so often discarded, hold zinc, magnesium, and tryptophan. These are not trendy nutrients, they're quiet workers. Zinc helps the immune system respond calmly. Magnesium eases tight muscles. Tryptophan helps produce serotonin and melatonin, essential for mood and sleep, which so many people lose track of after 60. My grandfather never called it a superfood. He just called it recovery food. I remember during times he had a cold, or after he spent a whole morning in the garden, my grandmother would roast slices of pumpkin, skin on, lightly salted, drizzled with olive oil. She would toast the seeds in the same pan, toss them with a little turmeric, and serve it all together on a small ceramic plate. It wasn't just beautiful, golden, steaming, earthy. It felt grounding, like something that helped him land back into his body after a day of movement. He never rushed through it. He chewed slowly. He used his fingers. He let the heat settle into his bones. And sometimes he'd say, "Pumpkin is like a friend. It doesn't speak much, but it gives you what you forgot you needed." That stayed with me, because as we age, we don't always need more. We need reminders. Reminders of foods that aren't flashy but faithful. Reminders of ingredients that helped our grandparents recover from illness, survive winters, and raise families with little more than a garden and a stove. Pumpkin and its seeds form a trio. One part supports your joints, another cares for your eyes, a third speaks to your immunity and rest. They come from the same fruit, yet they serve different parts of your aging body, quietly, generously. And in a world that often tells older adults to look for complicated answers, my grandfather found his healing in the simplest ones: a slice of golden squash, a handful of toasted seeds, a meal that didn't try to fix him, but gently helped him return to himself. From root to seed, from earth to table, we move now to the next ally. Not one that nourishes directly, but one that transforms everything else you eat. A food that acts like a whisper in your gut, a protector of energy, a quiet shield for digestion. Before we move on, let me ask you something. When was the last time a simple meal made you feel truly restored? Not just full, but steady, clear, and at ease in your body. If that question stirs something in you, take a moment to check the pinned comment. There's something there I left for you. A small reflection, a gentle step, something that might bring these ideas closer to your own kitchen, your own rhythm. Now let's continue. with a food that doesn't just feed, but helps everything else you eat come alive. Here's a kind of tiredness that doesn't come from poor sleep or long walks. It comes from inside, subtle, persistent, confusing, a heaviness in the belly, a fog in the mind, meals that leave you bloated instead of satisfied, a quiet fatigue that follows even after a full night's rest. For many people after 60, this becomes the new normal. But it's not just age. Often, it's the stomach calling out, gently, insistently, for help. What most don't realize is that as the body ages, it stops producing as much stomach acid. This isn't something we feel directly, but we feel its absence. Without enough acid, we struggle to break down protein, absorb B vitamins, and activate the enzymes that turn food into usable strength. Slowly, our meals begin to weigh us down instead of lifting us up. The digestion weakens, the nutrients pass by unused, and our body, though we eat, begins to feel underfed. My grandfather had a quiet habit, one that puzzled me when I was younger. At lunch, next to his main plate, whether it was lentils, rice, or fish, he always placed a small portion of something sour: pickled carrots, sauerkraut, fermented beets. Sometimes just a spoonful, never much, but always there. I once asked him why, and he said something I never forgot. Your stomach should never be alone. It needs companions that know how to prepare the way. What he meant, I came to understand later, is that fermented vegetables, created through slow, natural fermentation, contain living bacteria, enzymes, and mild acids. These elements help the body digest more completely, especially meals that are harder on an aging gut. Sauerkraut, kimchi, pickled radish. They might seem like sides, but they work like keys. They unlock the value of the meal you've prepared. They ease the stomach's work. They reduce inflammation. And over time, they help restore a kind of lightness in the belly, in the breath, in the way your clothes fit and your thoughts flow. For my grandfather, it wasn't about probiotics or science. It was about tradition. His parents did it. Their parents did too. He trusted that this small ritual, just 2 spoonfuls a day, gave his body what it no longer produced in abundance. And watching him, I saw the truth of it. He rarely complained of indigestion. He didn't nap after meals. He moved with steady energy from morning to evening, and his skin, even in his 80s, held a quiet glow. He used to say, "Don't just eat for fullness. Eat so your body can use what you give it." Fermented foods were his way of doing that. Not in large amounts, just enough, just consistently. There's a reason these foods appear in nearly every long-lived culture: Korea, Japan, Eastern Europe, the Andes. In each place, elders respect the power of foods that have been transformed by time. Foods that teach the body how to process, how to protect, how to preserve its energy. Fermented vegetables are not loud in flavor or in presence, but they are a bridge between what you chew and what your cells receive, between the plate and the pulse of strength you hope to carry into the next day. And now, from this quiet acid that cleanses and prepares, we move to something softer, something rich in memory. A food my grandfather took not in the morning, but in the hush of evening, when the house quieted, and the body asked not for energy, but for repair. In the quiet hours of the evening, when the day had softened and the light outside dimmed, my grandfather had a ritual. It wasn't dramatic, it didn't smell sweet or spicy. It didn't fill the room with noise. It was simple: 1 boiled egg, a drizzle of garlic oil, and a few greens, lightly steamed, resting beside it. No ceremony, just consistency. And over time, I came to understand it was more than food. It was a conversation between his aging body and the rest it was about to enter. For many people in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, the body doesn't recover the way it once did. Muscles take longer to rebuild, cuts linger, energy feels slower to return after even small efforts. And yet, many avoid eggs, especially the yolks, out of fear. Fear of cholesterol, fear of outdated ideas, fear that something rich must also be harmful. But the truth is gentler than that. The yolk is not the enemy. It is a gift, one filled with choline, lutein, and essential fats that nourish the brain, protect the eyes, and support the slow rebuilding of tissues after each day's wear. When you combine that yolk with garlic oil, not raw garlic but gently infused, softened by time and heat, something remarkable happens. Garlic has been used for centuries to support the immune system, improve circulation, and soothe inflammation. When it meets the richness of the egg, it doesn't overpower, it amplifies. It turns the dish into something more than a meal, a tonic, a balm, a quiet promise of support for joints, memory, and immunity. In some regions of Japan and Eastern Europe, elders still end their days with soft-boiled eggs flavored with sesame or garlic oil, not out of trend, out of memory, out of respect for what the body needs when it is preparing to rest. Protein to repair muscles, healthy fats to nourish the nervous system, and warmth to signal safety. My grandfather had never heard of choline. He didn't talk about anti-inflammatory compounds. He only said, "At night, give your body something it can use in silence." That always moved me, because it wasn't about effort. It was about care. He didn't cook to impress. He cooked to support himself. And even in his 90s, he slept deeply. He rarely woke in the night. His hands were steady, his thoughts clear. The meal itself took less than 5 minutes to prepare. 1 egg, boiled. Garlic warmed in olive oil until fragrant, then strained. A drizzle over the egg. A few greens beside it. Spinach, kale, whatever was in the garden. That was all. And yet it gave him everything. The calm of routine, the strength of protein, the healing of ancient ingredients. This wasn't breakfast food, he used to say. It was a pact, a quiet agreement with the body. You've carried me. Now I will feed you, gently, properly, so we may try again tomorrow. And that's where we leave this final food, not with fanfare, but with reverence. Because true strength after 60 doesn't always come from what we add, but from what we honor, what we remember, what we give back to the body that has carried us for so long. Now, as this story draws to a close, we return to where it all began, with a question of movement, of nourishment, of quiet strength that can still be found, one meal and one moment at a time. Those who stay curious about food stay young. Dr. Shigeaki Hinohara's words weren't about resisting age, but about staying present. My grandfather lived this quietly. He didn't follow trends or count nutrients. He ate what made him feel steady. Warm beans with olive oil, golden pumpkin, a spoonful of fermented vegetables, a soft egg at night. These weren't health strategies. They were gestures of care, repeated, trusted, enough. He didn't ask for more years. He asked for strength in the years he had, and his body responded. He walked without help. He remembered names. He woke with purpose, not because of any miracle, but because of the foods that met him where he was. Aging, yes, but still living, still worthy of nourishment. That's the quiet truth from the places where people live long with clarity. Their meals are humble, repeated, rooted in memory and land. Not perfect, but consistent and made with attention. So ask yourself, which food already lives in your home, quietly waiting to be honored? Which one feels familiar to your body, even now? You don't need to change everything. Just return to what gives you strength, gently, repeatedly, and let your body thank you in its own time.